Welcome back to the Real Beauty Re-Up podcast. I'm Regina. Duh. Hit subscribe to keep the content coming in hot. Disclaimer. This episode contains real, raw, lived experiences. Some details have been disclosed intentionally, and others have been withheld for legal, safety, and ethical reasons. What you are about to hear reflects my personal experiences, perceptions, and documented events as I live them. This episode contains explicit content, sensitive subject matter, and references to real-world harm, including abuse of power, identity interference, and psychological trauma. Receipts exist, documentation.
Yeah, fuck up. Look, fuck you, man. Yeah, tell your line ass fucking shit.
Bloodline betrayal. What they don't tell you is that blood can also be used as clout and leverage. Betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes it comes from people who know your childhood stories, who think they know your weaknesses, who think they know your triggers. And when those people align with outside forces, the damage multiplies. This episode is about bloodline betrayal, how my bloodline cursed itself and burned the family tree to the ground. Betrayal at the root. Family has access that strangers don't. They think they know your history, your trauma, your fears, your ambitions, your financial patterns, your relationships. When that information is weaponized, it doesn't feel like conflict. It feels like invasion. And the most dangerous betrayal is subtle. Cooperation. Sharing information, allowing narratives to spread, failing to correct lies, quietly aligning with people who harm you. Silence becomes participation after that. I was born Regina to a mother that was not a mother, but a monster. Once I took my first breath, I was unaware of the war that was placed upon my life from birth. From the one person who was to start my life with love, grace, and opportunity, instead born into a crack-addicted house with a crack-addicted mother, with an excessive, abusive behavior and a lust for malice. I was 6 weeks old when I was removed from the home of my bio mom. After a call was reported, to Pennsylvania Children Protective Services, whom I later found out was an aunt who made the call. I was removed and I was placed into foster care in my foster family's home immediately following, with the allowed visitation to see if my bio mom could get it together. In those 5 years leading to my final adoption, there were minimal shows to visits. No birthdays were celebrated with the bio family. At that point, we moved, and the only sibling I knew I had was an older brother who was in the custody of my bio mom's twin brother. All Italian Caucasian family was my family, and I was taught to not ask questions, or a lot of responses were gaslit or pure, I don't know, which naturally led to issues in my childhood regarding race, adoption, social norms, and building relationships were not the same reality as every other kid around me. The open door effect. Institutions don't need to dig deep when someone close hands them the blueprint. When family confirms distorted versions of you, validates false instability narratives, or provides access to private information, they become unintentional accomplices or intentional ones. That's when external harassment feels coordinated, because it is. When I first met my siblings, I was taught or thought bringing a family together was the option, but that's not what they seen. Even though they neglected, abused, and abandoned me, When I did reunite with them later in life, my bio family seen me as a wanna be better than, which immediately became grounds for them to click up, group up, and invade my personal privacy, relationships, and friendships to, of course, conquer and destroy. My sisters, siblings, and peers would friend request each other or have private conversations behind my back, or private conversations with my kids or family or in-laws that they didn't even know. They would coordinate, triangulate, and then cut me out as if they didn't even know me at all. The disrespect became louder and louder and louder. They thought they were embarrassing me, feeling enjoyment for coming against me in any negative way possible, even if that meant running to the arms of my past toxic relationships. Yet again, no one said or seemed uncomfortable at all. Inheritance, control, and image. Bloodline betrayal often circles around three things: money, reputation, control. Assets become pressure points, poverty becomes leverage, unclaimed funds become strategic silence, and when legacy is involved, the stakes shift from emotional to generational. Some people don't want you erased. They want you weakened enough to redirect what was meant for you. It wasn't until I was in high school when I continued my search for my story. At the time, computers were getting more advanced with public searches. My brother called me that night and we spoke. I asked if he found my mom. He said he did, but he refused to have any parts of her and my other siblings at the time. I didn't know why. He left it at, "You'll see." I met up with my brother in Philly. We called my baby sister that he looked over from time to time or checked on because she as well was raised outside of our bio mom. Come to find out later, as a matter of fact, my bio mom had no custody of any of the 6 kids she had during that time frame, in which all of us were no further than a year, 2 or more apart. A month and a half later, after having to bury my adopted grandma, my brother, now lost but now found, was brutally murdered in Philly. I met my other siblings at his funeral, along with my bio mom. My uncle took me one other time to see her in her apartment. But after we took a bus and got all the way to an address for an apartment, she wasn't even there. We stayed at a hotel and met up with her the next day. She was hungover in lingerie, burning incense in a small apartment. I thought I would be happy, to have a sister, or to find one, or to know them. As my bio sister came in, who I thought, would be a sight for sore eyes, and we could be introduced and have a great time, her thoughts were not the same at all. I was now not only her biggest secret competition, but her enemy, and her hate grew more and more and more for a spot I wasn't competing for. A spot for a mom, a spot for a spot I didn't even see like that. From that point on, the relationship and the bloodline would be ice versus fire. And the saddest part is the mother in between would be extremely narcissistic, with malicious tendencies that I was unaware of, would enjoy throwing fuel to the flame. Meeting with my sister ended in a fist fight that would set an unseen precursor to what would come next. The emotional trap. Family betrayal is destabilizing because it attacks identity. You start questioning, was I ever supported? Were conversations even real? Was I protected or positioned? And that confusion is powerful because it keeps you emotionally stuck while decisions are being made around you. Once the abuser stalked and found me over 3.5 hours away, that trickled into a deeper well of darkness. Once the abuser connected with my bio mom and their family of demonic nature, it increased. Their obsessive group thinking and groups of collaborative, organized, off-the-wall hate, crime, greed, lust, the list goes on, was insatiable. And it was built off of a hunger of hate for me. The person introducing everyone, and because it was familiar to them to be toxic, jealous, envious, entitled, and desperate for a life they didn't even belong in. So when I reported the abuse to them, they applied more pressure on me, eyes rolling. Even though I went in with pure intentions and sibling love, they saw a sibling scam. After meeting my half-sister, I thought they were going to fight for my side. Instead, she was plotting now with my abuser. They went out to the neighborhood even after my sibling was sleeping with my abuser and drinking while she was pregnant. I still went to check on her. At one point, went to pick her up from the bar she was sitting in with her best friend, who drank with all her pregnancies also, so they see nothing wrong with it. So as I went to go take her out of the bar that night, no love, no grace, no respect. What they did instead was take bribes from the abuser to make me look bad, to cover up theft, incest, identity theft, secret kids, death plots, and false imprisonment. To get me to forfeit who I am to a sibling I thought I knew. It took years for them to think that they were slow walking me by causing me any type of destruction to my love life, money, faith, and stability. They tried to break me out of my gifts since I was born. False testimonies, false paperwork, false claims, false rumors, false allegations, all while attacking my stability on purpose, or sabotage my jobs to make it seem like I couldn't take care of myself. Their lies to stick, even if it was brutally wrong. They cut my brake lines. They tried to do everything to unalive me for people who wanted my spot that nobody else was willing to work for. If they couldn't harm me, they were willing to lure me to jail unlawfully with no care for my kids, my safety, or my future. Again, for my money, my energy, my life, my decisions, my friendships, my time. The psychological layer. There's a unique gaslighting that happens in Bloodline Betrayal. You're overthinking. They would never do that. You're being paranoid. Family is family. We don't talk about that. What goes down in this house stays in this house. But here's the truth. Access plus motive plus opportunity creates possibility. Dangerous or great. And when behavior aligns with harm repeatedly, it stops being coincidence. I had my half-sister over my adopted mom's house after she had passed away. The only thing that she could call back and respond to was not how I was doing. If I needed anything, was I well? She bashed everything about my home, my clothes, my life, with nothing of her own to show. And the people listening just spun it in a whole nother direction instead of saying, hey, I don't think that's the right thing to do, or you don't feel any type of way by talking about your family like that. Isn't my license and my diploma by 17? I would pick her up from time to time, keep in touch with her from time to time, thinking that blood is thicker than water. Be there, but at what cost? It escalates to the extremes of sleeping with my exes, strategically speaking intentions and harm over me, and digging into info about my hidden paperwork, my financial assets, and then to put a price on my head for my money and my freedom, the same freedom I was praying for. They didn't want me to leave, even if it cost my life. Identity and home life became their weekly group chats meetings of humiliation, and behind-the-scene rituals that became a regular family reunion to these individuals I was calling family. As I would rise, they would watch, gossip, slander, and sabotage. I would witness them do this to everyone around us. Invite many people to cookouts and gatherings while selectively picking and choosing others, intentionally targeting one family member. They felt, oh, well, she thinks she's doing better then. Or they'll take it to the extremes of defamation of character, group chats, and organized hazing of an individual they feel they can humble, be it family or not. The patterns of abuse I noticed that stems out of jealousy and envy was exactly the rope hanging around my bloodline. So much so, they'd hung themselves to take another person they feel shouldn't do better than them down. My half-sibling was now competing for men I had, friends I had, cars I had. She didn't even have a license, a diploma, any of the skills that I had worked hard for to obtain the life that I had. Would now try to sabotage me behind my back and smile to my face any chance that she got. After she found out I was pregnant unwillingly through the last molestation attack from the abuser, instead, she was jealous about the news and even slept with the abuser. Then once she got pregnant, she gave her baby the name I was going to give my daughter at the time I was pregnant. But I decided at the last minute to change my daughter's name from an R name to an N name to break the cycle of the R's of the cycle of abuse in that toxic dynamic. She decided to give her daughter my baby's name. Now, one person called the cops for me. They did not come to help me in any way. In fact, they would just join together and sabotage every opportunity I would take to leave or move forward. They worked with the abuser as long as they received money, drugs, or whatever the vice. They attacked and used the kids I thought I was allowing them to meet for genetic and biological purposes. They now were using them as weapons, leverage, and a key to the door I had already shut them out of. In the time frame of me being in their environment, we were humiliated, hated on, harassed, stalked, and robbed by the same people we called family. A recorded phone call, pictures taken without my consent. Just insidious. I couldn't have my bio mom watch my kids when I went to work. I would end up with drunk, crazy phone calls all the time. I was the only one in the group with a job. I was the only one in the group with a license. I was the only one in the group with any type of work ethic. So she used that opportunity to give my kids her 400 milligram Seroquels to go to sleep because they were getting on her nerves and she wanted to drink and smoke her weed and crack and call up people on the phone. Needless to say, I had to get at her and I had to stop letting her try to watch my children. So now I was taking my kids to work with me. Weeks of spiraling out of control. The cops would be called to break up the numerous fistfights at the residence. I stopped letting my kids go there. So now, my family, my ex-ops, and the abuser would join forces in a plot for my life they knew nothing about, had no parts in, and brought no joy or progress to. Their only mission was, if she wants to be successful, and if she won't let us take advantage of her, we'll destroy her. I don't think like that. So I can't relate. That was another issue. When I first met the Bio family, I noticed a lot of differences in not only appearances, but cultural and religious. Everyone had their own systems. Some were Muslim, Christian, some were doing witchcraft behind the scenes. Life seemed to be lived separate, but they would smile in gatherings, then talk behind each other's back horrendously, which caused a lot of secret animosity and beef. So the differences were extremely noticeable, and that's what triggered the underlying bloodline curse of jealousy, judgment, envy, and betrayal. The break in the chain. The moment you see it clearly, something shifts. You stop seeking validation. You stop explaining yourself. You stop trying to prove loyalty to people who benefit from your silence. Sometimes the betrayal isn't personal, it's structural. Sometimes some bloodlines operate in secrecy, in hierarchy, in control. And when one member refuses to comply, pressure follows. But breaking generational cycles always feels like betrayal to those who benefited from them. I can't relate. This ain't shade. This isn't tea. This is facts. And I have the right to avoid people, places, and things I know are intentionally trying to cause harm or disrespect. I will never teach my kids or anyone else the competition mindset. I will never encourage jealousy, betrayal, or dishonor. The weirdest part is when I removed myself, they still felt entitled to watch my every move, even from different profiles. It was like once I said I'm walking away, they went harder to pray, lurk, and attack me behind the scenes, having group chats about me with the mistress, my cousins, my half-siblings that are sleeping with my exes I couldn't relate to. I should not have to look over my children's shoulder for friends and family. Things just got even more weird. They thought orchestrated sabotage and poverty would rock my stability. They were doing so much better, even though they were throwing rocks and hiding their hands the whole time. Again, in a game that I knew nothing about or had no inkling that I was playing. I had now my 5th relocation from these individuals. You think that they would get it? No. Instead, they go to the courthouse to try to sabotage me through my kids. False reports, excessive court dates. Mind you, I had no interaction with police unless to call for help for my safety. I kept a job, a place to live, a car, even though I was again started from scratch. In their mind, it was some competition. So when I realized that they would go as far as trying to take my freedom illegally to cover fraud, harassments, cover-ups, and their distorted and unnatural abuse, it wasn't happening. I was done playing small, done being cute, done being soft, because that's my family. And being cute and soft around a bunch of murderous, insidious predators, this now became an entire situation in itself. Because it's not going to happen. I will fight for my kids' life. I will fight for my life and damn sure my legacy and all that I built without being raised with any support and only destruction in my way. I knew I didn't deserve any of this. But one thing for sure and 2 things for certain. Families shouldn't allow demolition and destruction for their twisted enjoyment of watching their own blood be sacrificed to their ego. And this is where it gets heavier. Because when bloodlines fracture and control becomes the objective, the next move isn't always financial. Sometimes it's about custody. Sometimes it's about a narrative. Sometimes it's about rewriting origin stories. On the next episode, adoption or abduction. Because when authority and bloodline intersect, children become leverage. And that's where the line between protection and control gets dangerously thin. Especially when that line is cut with money. Thank you so much for listening. The Beauty Re-Up on all platforms and www.reginadickle.com for all your merch, ebooks, tarot, and more.